Okay, so we did chapter 11, which was talking about problem-based learning. I'm Jay.
I'm Monique.
I'm Brittany.
Okay, so basically we went off the points in the beginning of the chapter that just kind of broke down the different sections. And it kind of started with just an overview of problem-based learning. And problem-based learning is presenting authentic and meaningful problems to students and having them solve them. We talked about different things that really made that good. Personally, I think it's good because it's not just where they're sitting there listening, being lectured, and then being given work to complete to show that they know and understand the lesson. So that was one of my biggest things I liked about it.
And I like that it was real life problems they solve, which they carry on to adulthood.
Right.
And it sticks with you.
Yeah, and I liked it too because their critical thinking skills are becoming more developed, and they're also having to create artifacts that explains their reasoning behind their critical thinking.
Kind of piggybacking on what they both said, I definitely like the fact that the problem-solving skills are developing. As you know, for kids at that age in elementary, as they get older, they're going to encounter more problems that aren't necessarily just school-related or class-related, but just in general life problems. And the sooner they start developing those problem-solving skills, the better they should be with it, hopefully by the time they encounter serious stuff. So I do like the fact that it helps, not just in the classroom, it helps outside of the classroom.
True. And it's like a collaborative effort, so they also learn
social skills. Which kind of is perfect because it kind of segues into like the theoretical support for problem-based learning, which basically the difference between problem-based learning and project-based is that, or not even just project-based, but the difference between problem-based and just direct instruction where kids are just sitting there not doing anything, this focuses on their cognitive and social skills, and with that, the teacher's not going to have a quiet classroom. The kids aren't going to just be sitting there with their face in a book. They're going to be actually up, discussing, dialoguing, moving around, and like Monique said, being completely hands-on and just jumping into the lesson and not just reading about it. So I think that's a really cool thing.
Which makes it funner and then you remember more.
Definitely.
And I had told Jay earlier about the video we had watched with the heads up, heads down, heads together, bottoms up, and the kids kind of like are working together to solve whatever problem. So that's probably something I would do in my future classrooms. Then the group effort, like you were saying, it makes it fun and they're still learning. So
I think that it's good to kind of with the fact that it is a social lesson. Being able to group them, it'll help our special learners, our learners who learn differently, our ELL learners, even our students that might have learning disabilities. Having them grouped, and we can kind of as teachers decide where we group people, how we pair them. It can be random, it can be simultaneous.
You can like group like higher levels with the ELLs to help them.
Exactly. So then that way you're kind of, it's a definite like learning community even in their smaller groups because they're counting on each other and using each other to help learn I guess better.
Right.
So the next section that it talked about was planning and conducting our problem-based learning. Basically just kind of talking about planning the lessons, using problems that engage the students. You don't want to create a problem in your lesson where the students are just like, who cares about this, or this is so far beyond their conceptual possibilities that it's just like whatever. You really want to pick something that they're going to enjoy, something that'll keep them engaged, keep them focused, that they're going to really want to get to the bottom of.
And that's where we'll have to ask, what do they know and not know too, right?
Right. Getting to know your students beforehand with any kind of lesson I think is beneficial. You definitely want to be able to tap into prior knowledge. But kind of going back to that engagement piece, you want to know what they know, you want to know what they enjoy, so that way you can give them some things that meet them where they are, that get them interested, and can take them where you want them to go, ultimately where, what your end goal is with the lesson plan. So, there was a chart that I kind of saw that I liked. It's chart 11.3. In my book, it's page 411, but I have the older edition, so it's probably a different page. And it basically just talks about the phases of problem-based learning, syntax for problem-based learning. Phase 1, it says to orient students to the problem. So basically, the teacher is going to let the students know what the problem is, describe the requirements, get the students motivated and engaged, and just kind of go over the learning goals. Phase 2 says organize students for study. So basically here the teacher helps the students define and organize their groups and their tasks, in the tasks basically that relate to the problem. Phase 3, it says assist independent in-group investigation. And here the teacher encourages the students to gather appropriate information and to conduct experiments. So basically for the teacher, you're kind of floating around and, like I said, kind of scaffolding, and you're kind of able to say, okay, good, that was a good idea, but how about take it this way? And you can kind of mold where they, shape where they, guide them or shape them, like, I guess, in the direction you want them to go in.
I like that they get the feedback.
Yeah.
Because then they can kind of, like you were saying, like, have a place to start and then a place to continue on with their, like, discussions.
And like I think feedback, that was one of the things that it talked about like later in the chapter, was giving them, being able to have feedback having feedback right away, not necessarily having feedback at the end after they take a test or after they turn in a paper, but having feedback as they go, so that way you don't they
don't get lost,
right? Because it's like if you're saying the lessons are supposed to be like building and stepping stones, if they're not getting corrected at this step, by the time they get here, if you correct them, you might have missed everything before that they didn't completely get. Okay, so phase 4. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's kind of like that zone of proximal development. Current level.
And then even that kind of says that as in, what is the second part where when they work in groups, it's how far they're able to, how much more they can do when they're engaging with other students, I guess, or with the help of someone assisting them. So I mean that's definitely very true. Phase 4 speaks about the development and presentation of artifacts and exhibits, and that's something you said earlier, Brittany. And I think that's cool because if we, like in one of my teaching social studies class, we had to make some artifacts. And it was really cool.
Artifacts.
I thought it was really neat.
I feel like there was like a purpose for the whole assignment. It's like you get asked a question with problem-based learning, and then you have something like an end result, which is the artifact or the exhibit. So I like that.
And then you can kind of have like a museum or something like at the end of the week where everyone gets to see the artifacts that other groups created, and even if they presented and kind of
you could do it with like cultures, like a culture exhibit, and like they can bring something that represents their culture.
That's kind of like what the thing the little guest speakers just said just now, kind of implementing art into your lesson plan, so then you're kind of bringing other things in.
And I guess that makes
extra points for that because we integrated that little that other thing, please.
But they're also learning by looking at the other students' artifacts.
And then it kind of all comes back to that you retain more when you're engaged, and students are more engaged in group activities.
I think
so it's just like all the things that you want them to do: critical thinking, problem solving skills,
like
all of that stuff. They're hitting on it, and they're going to be so engaged with this whole group activity of it all that I feel like we would definitely succeed.
Self-directed when they do their own activities too. Nice.
Okay, and so the last phase was analyze and evaluate the problem-solving process. And here it just says teachers help students to reflect on their investigation and the processes they used. I don't know. I guess for this, one thing I like about this, as far as evaluating and making sure your students have learned, you can kind of do like a reflection. You can have, based on like the students' artifacts, if they present their information to the class, you could kind of create a multiple choice question. I don't like multiple choice question tests, but you can do short answer type questions from each group's thing, and then once you get it all typed up, maybe the next day you hand it out to the students. And depending on how each student does on information they got from that the other groups were giving, it kind of lets you know did the people who were doing that problem, if they learned it, then they can reteach it. It's like they ultimately say, if you know something, you can teach it. And then if the students who were listening can then write down in their test, oh, this is what this was. This is what we learned from this person's group. Then that means they're also explaining it, which means they also learned it. And so that's a really cool.
And usually when you teach it, then you really
you really got it
more.
I don't know. I think that problem-based learning is really awesome. I also think that we are at 9 minutes and 42 seconds.
Well, I think I definitely will use it.
Yeah, I definitely want to use
fun with it.
I definitely want to use this and the project-based because I like them both.
I like
really
the project-based too.
Yeah.
I think this one I like.
I lean a little bit more.
to this one?
Exactly.
Really? I think I like the project-based more because I think I like the end result. Like, I don't know, it just seems like you can do it on a bigger scale. But I guess you could do a problem-solving lesson on a bigger scale too. But I don't know. I guess it's all about knowing what you want the students to learn and planning backwards from there. Extra 10 points. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.